Turkey has blamed Moscow for killing 33 of its troops in Syria.
Aynı yalana sarıldı. Türk askeri olmaması gereken bir bölgede bulundu.
4 employees of Russia's Sputnik news agency in Turkey have been released after questioning.
In what some are calling a flagrant violation of media freedom.
Hello, I'm Richard Gisbert, and you're at The Listening Post. Among the media stories that we're covering this week, Syria is a proxy war, and the outside players, Turkey and Russia, are using their media muscle to shift the narrative in their favor. Coronavirus is still big news, but don't believe everything you click on. Misinformation is making the rounds on social media. Pakistan wants to grow its tourism industry. Enter the influencers. But how do they get to parts of the country that are close to Pakistanis? And when it comes to anti-Muslim policies, Donald Trump and Narendra Modi are singing from the same song sheet. It was a bilateral meeting, and it came at a tense time, but it resulted in a ceasefire in Syria, specifically in Idlib, in the northwest. Neither of the two leaders in front of the news cameras, however, were Syrian. There was the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, and Turkey's president, Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Both men have their forces stationed in Syria. The Russians are backing fighters loyal to Bashar al-Assad in their push to take back Idlib. And Turkish troops are trying to repel the Syrian advance that has already forced another 1 million people from their homes and worsened a catastrophic refugee crisis. In the media battle to shape global perceptions, Russia has Sputnik, a state-owned news outlet operating in Turkish amongst other languages. And Turkey has TRT World, a state-owned broadcaster with its own story to tell. This conflict, given the various proxy players and their objectives, was never going to be easy for outsiders to understand. And the news now coming out of Russia and Turkey, the competing narratives, they're not helping. Our starting point this week is more than 2,000 kilometers from Idlib, a capital city that has grown central to the Syria story, Moscow. Two leaders meeting in Moscow, discussing the fate of a third country, Syria. 6 hours later, Presidents Erdogan and Putin emerge with a ceasefire, the latest in hand. Bashar al-Assad must have been feeling slightly left out.
فكان هدفنا المشترك نحن وروسيا هو أن نبعد تركيا عن النهج الذي سارت به دعم الإرهابيين.
He was in Damascus, being interviewed by Russia's primary state-owned news channel, Rossiya 24.
تركيا هي بلد جار، ومن الطبيعي أن يكون لديك علاقات سليمة مع الدولة الجارة.
The Syrian leader was using his Russian allies' news outlet as a pipeline to deliver a message to the Turkish people.
لكن لا يمكن أن نصل إلى هذه النتيجة وأردوغان يدعم الإرهابيين.
The battle for Idlib is probably one of the most important unwritten chapters of the Syrian conflict. There's a concentration of the most hardcore opposition to the Syrian regime of Bashar al-Assad. We've seen Bashar al-Assad's offensive already displace 1 million people, with the potential to displace even more. Turkey, the guarantor of the Syrian opposition, has entered the fray. We've also seen Russia now backing up Bashar al-Assad as their guarantor. Both sides at odds as they back rival factions inside Syria. And this has put stress on the relationship, and this has found its way trickling down into the local medias of both countries.
For much of the Syrian war, the media in Turkey and Russia have gone easy on the other's government. Both sides have their objectives. Neither wants an escalation. Turkish reporters, taking their cues from the Erdogan government, have generally shied away from stories of Russian war crimes in Syria, focusing their criticism on the Kremlin's allies in this fight, the Assad government's forces.
Rejim güçleri İdlib'de sivillerin adeta yaşam damarlarını kesiyor.
On February 27th, that changed when 33 Turkish soldiers were killed in airstrikes in the province of Idlib. It's been decades since that many Turks have died in a single attack. Initial reports in the Turkish media echoed the official line from Ankara that the Syrians were behind the bombing.
33 şehit, bir kor olup Türkiye'nin yüreğini yaktı. Esad rejimi Suriye'nin İdlib kentinde Mehmetçi'yi hedef aldı.
Before long, Turkish news outlets were changing their tune.
Hiç şüphe düşmesin. Zaten arkasında Rusya olduğunu kendileri de defalarca ifade etmişlerdi. Onu bilmemek mümkün değil. Aklımıza da dalga geçiyorlar.
In a couple of days you started to see this kind of analysis, especially on Hurriyet Daily by Sedat Ergin, and he's a long-time prominent journalist and objective face. In the Turkish media, he penned an article saying that it's very clear that when the Assad regime planes bombarded Turkey, they were in formation with the Russian planes. So one way or another, Russians had the information about this issue. And I think that just kind of opened way for other media. For example, Yeni Şafak Daily had its front page talking about the Russian role in the Syrian civil war, basically killing the civilians.
It was as if a taboo had been lifted, and Turkish media outlets took the gloves off, directly blaming the Russians for the casualties.
Rusya'nın yaptığı koordinatlar bize bildirilmedi, sözleri gerçeği yansıtmıyor.
The Turkish authorities began turning their attention to media outlets in Turkey that the Kremlin controls. Starting with Sputnik. Unlike Russia's best-known media export, RT, Sputnik is not a 24-hour news channel. It's a news agency / website / radio platform, and Turkish is just one of 30 languages in which it operates. As Vladimir Putin has said, Sputnik and RT are out to break the monopoly of Anglo-Saxon global information streams. One particularly contentious piece produced by Sputnik was this one, provocatively headlined, about the Turkish province of Hatay, which was once Syrian territory.
At a time when more than 30 soldiers have been martyred, some blaming the Russian Air Force for their deaths, to print a story so provocative about something that happened 80 years ago. Many people looked at that story from a very, very controversial, very provocative manner, as if the Russians were trying to send a message.
The Turks countered with a message of their own. 4 Sputnik employees based in Turkey were arrested. That was after a mob attacked 3 of their homes. And those reporters say they didn't even produce the story in question, that it was filed by Sputnik's international office in London.
The homes of our colleagues were attacked by groups of 15 to 20 people making racist chants. We don't know who they were or how they found us. I advised my colleagues to go to the police and file a complaint. But after giving their statements, they were taken into custody. Thankfully, lawyers from the Reporters Association in Ankara helped us, and our colleagues were released later in the evening.
Sputnik became kind of the first target within Turkey because it represents the Russian point of view. Hence, Erdogan is kind of trying to show his muscles, but since he cannot really get Vladimir Putin himself or Russian forces, so he kind of attacks the weakest one, and here's the media.
Sputnik is really popular in Turkey because of the tight control of Turkish media by the Turkish government. A lot of stuff that not dared to be published by the Turkish journals would appear on Sputnik. It publishes a lot of anti-Erdogan stuff that serves Putin's agenda.
Sputnik, just like the channel RT or Russia Today, is the continuation of Soviet media outlets that were aimed at external audiences. It is an important element of foreign power, of soft power in Turkey, and it really enjoys support of the Russian government.
Which is one of the reasons that Russia's foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, reportedly got on the phone to Ankara to get those reporters released. What RT is to Russia, TRT World is to Turkey. State-funded news platforms aimed at foreign audiences speaking their languages. But the Turks are latecomers to this game. RT was launched in 2005, putting Russia's spin on stories. Turkey didn't get TRT World on the air until 10 years later, in 2015.
Turkey has only recently understood the importance of this, catching up with other countries like the United States, Russia, China, France, Germany, who already have multiple outlets broadcasting throughout the world in many different languages. And we're seeing other channels now slowly sprouting. A News is an English news provider. The state news agency Anadolu Ajans also now broadcasts in English. This is going to be very, very important going forward for Turkey as it continues to develop its media presence.
TRT World de aslında Sputnik gibi.
TRT World is an official agency like Sputnik. Therefore, TRT World might be trying to reflect Turkey's view. Sputnik and RT are using their own perspectives. Al Jazeera must be using its own perspective as well. People keep comparing Sputnik to Pravda, but this is an overused comparison. There should be a benchmark of what can be called propaganda. Propaganda according to what or whom?
Neye göre, kime göre propagandadan bahsedebiliriz?
One of the reasons Russian and other foreign media outlets are finding audiences in Turkey is that there is a market for what they offer, alternative narratives. For 15 years, President Erdogan's AK Party government has brought once vibrant Turkish news organizations to heel, forced channels and papers to close, arrested scores of journalists, and chased others into exile. That's why Turks are looking for news elsewhere. And Vladimir Putin's Russia is more than happy to help. We're discussing other media stories that are on our radar this week with one of our producers, Nick Muirhead. Nick, the coronavirus, or COVID-19 as it's now known, still topping the news agenda. You've been looking at another side of this story, not so much the information around the outbreak, but the misinformation.
Yes, that's right, Richard. And for the most part, it's happening on social media. So you now have companies like Facebook, Twitter, YouTube making a concerted effort to pull down and delete misinformation, but also to direct users to more credible sources of information. The real problem, the trickier problem, is actually on WhatsApp, where communications are encrypted, so it's really hard to know what people are saying to one another. WhatsApp has around 2 billion users, so you can appreciate how misinformation can spread really easily on that platform.
So specifically, what kind of misinformation is it that you're talking about?
There's a lot of fear-mongering, so inflating the number of confirmed cases, inflating the number of sites that have been contaminated, but there's a large number of conspiracy theories out there. So coronavirus being used as a bioweapon, that is part of a plan to depopulate the world, that coronavirus was man-made. There was even a politician in the US by the name of Joanne Wright. She's a Republican who's also actually running for Congress. She tweeted that not only was the coronavirus man-made, but she pointed the finger at people like Bill Gates, George Soros, Hillary Clinton, even the Pope. She later deleted that tweet, but by then the conspiracy had gone viral, so to speak.
So not at all unlike some of the things that we were hearing out of China in the early days of the outbreak.
And also, just like in China, in the countries with confirmed cases, there are a lot of fake cures and fake prevention measures being circulated on social media, like eating garlic, drinking water every 15 minutes, spraying yourself with chlorine and alcohol. And you know what's interesting is that the World Health Organization has been reluctant to call COVID-19 a pandemic, but it's had no problem in calling this an infodemic, what it describes as an overabundance of information, some accurate and some not, that makes it hard for people to find trustworthy sources and reliable guidance when they need it. So really, this has turned into a battle on two fronts for governments and health services trying to contain not only the outbreak, but the misinformation as well.
Okay, thanks, Nick. It's a subgenre of social media that generates millions of dollars through billions of clicks. Travel vlogging, globe-trotting social media influencers sharing their quote-unquote authentic travel experiences. It pays for the influencers and for some of the countries they visit. It's a golden PR opportunity. Pakistan, for instance, wants to shed its image as being too dangerous for tourists. If you subscribe, as so many have, to travel vloggers like Rosie Gabrielle, Jordan Taylor, and Eva Zubek, you'll have seen a different side of Pakistan, one in which you can camp out in the Khyber Pass, solo hike through the Swat Valley, or discover beaches along the Persian Gulf. A lot of this content comes with the government's seal of approval. It's out to capitalize on the PR potential of photogenic visitors, white ones, with big online audiences. The Listening Post's Meenakshi Ravi now on the story behind Pakistan's social media makeover.
Today we have a report on the recruitment of terrorists in Pakistan.
Pakistan is on edge after the devastating Thursday attack.
Pakistan has a serious image problem.
So who are the Pakistani Taliban?
An American drone strike has killed the powerful Pakistan Taliban leader.
For years, the headlines have been about drone strikes, religious extremists, domestic bombings, instability, social and political. And it's where one of the biggest manhunts of modern times came to an end.
President Obama broke the news of bin Laden's
People
death.
are gawping. They simply can't believe that the world's most wanted man was living in their midst.
Just try building a tourism industry around all of that. That's the job Syed Zulfikar Bukhari has been tasked with.
Well, look, I think it's important to see Pakistan in a new lens and come out of that sort of post 9/11 trauma that we were put through. We've gone leaps and bounds beyond it, so it's about time the world also moves on with it.
Pakistan's is the kind of image problem that, once upon a time, would have been outsourced to a PR company based in New York or London. It would have been managed through glossy ad campaigns in magazines or on television. These days, the trick is to bring on the influencers.
And in this video, I'm going to take you on an epic 6-day adventure to the north of Pakistan.
They're young, telegenic, and adventurous, equipped with anything from a smartphone on a selfie stick to a full camera crew with top-of-the-range equipment. They create some of the most popular and impactful travel videos today.
It is jet ski time in Pakistan.
All in all, Pakistan turned out to be one of the most surprising adventures of my life.
They call themselves expert vagabonds, professional travelers, experience seekers, and they are key to the comeback that Pakistan's tourism industry wants to make.
It's been interesting that all of a sudden these almost completely white Westerners start showing up. There's obviously a global industry where nation states are looking to project certain images about themselves and carry out PR exercises.
To you calling Pakistan a terrorist country, oh, I bet you didn't visit the country then.
So in that sense, the Pakistani state is neither unique nor doing something particularly unprecedented.
This was so amazing. This was a dream come true for me.
When I went to Pakistan, what I saw was a country that was completely different from pretty much everything you see in the news. It's a really interesting situation because I feel that the vloggers and the bloggers kind of came first. And it was only after a little while that the Pakistani government noticed that these people are coming and creating beautiful content that talks nicely about the country.
My name is Eva.
Eva Zubek is from Poland.
Over the last year, I traveled to Pakistan far and wide.
With 463,000 subscribers on YouTube and almost as many on Instagram, she is among the top travel vloggers out there. She's posted from Yemen, Saudi Arabia, Mexico, even Syria. And the access she got in Pakistan was extraordinary.
Wow, this for me? Oh, this is the typical roti that the porters here eat and make.
Zubek has made films from adventure locations like the K2 mountain in northern Pakistan, and from some locations that many Pakistanis would like to visit, but cannot. In September 2019, she filmed a marathon in the remote Naltar Valley of Gilgit-Baltistan and took a lift from the Pakistani Air Force to get there. And then there were the videos she made in Gwadar, the port city in the southwestern region of Balochistan.
This is just amazing.
Balochistan has long had an insurgency on its hands and is a closed-off, no-go zone for the majority of Pakistanis. It is also a black hole for news and information. Most Pakistani journalists aren't allowed to go there, but a travel blogger from Poland did.
She says that, how Balochistan has the potential to be the next beach destination of this region. And yes, of course, the beaches of Gwadar are stunning, but at the same time, they're also inaccessible. And you cannot make a beach destination if it's restricted for a common traveler to actually go to these areas. And if a foreigner looks at that video and comes to Pakistan and wants to have a luxury vacation on the beach, there is no infrastructure available there to make that happen.
What was very obvious is that Eva and quite a few others had access to parts of Pakistan that Pakistanis don't have access to. There's a very controlled environment within which any conversation in Balochistan happens in Pakistan. There's a lot of political unrest there, but also the fact that a lot of the Afghan Taliban is allegedly based out there. There's speculation, obviously, that this facilitation is being done by the state.
I think there's a bit of a misconception that as foreign travel vloggers, we are given access to more places than local travel bloggers or even just local travelers. And that's not quite true. And I think it's frankly quite silly of people to suggest that the content that I make is being controlled or constrained by the state. That, I mean, I'm not being censored by anyone. I create my own travel content in the way that I like it and the way that I experience it. And that's all there is to it.
The Pakistani government has partnered with social media influencers, both domestic and international. It's clear, though, that Western bloggers, white ones, are a big part of the tourism push. Last year, Zubek and other influencers like Trevor James and Rosie Gabrielle from Canada and Alexandra Reynolds from the US had an audience with the Prime Minister Imran Khan. Local bloggers were left out. That irritated many Pakistanis who say their government is reinforcing the social prejudices of a bygone colonial era. The idea that Westerners have more credibility than Pakistanis, or the notion that, quote, white is right, that a white person's word outweighs that of a brown person, even when the brown person is from the country in question. We raised this point with the chairman of Pakistan's National Tourism Coordination Board.
I don't even think it's anything that important to even discuss in an interview, to be honest. I don't think it's even worthy. But, you know, at the end of the day, Pakistan was a colonialized country. Subconsciously, I think you listen to the person from the outside. So even when you have local bloggers and they do the exact same thing or maybe even better, it's difficult for them to comprehend or believe it until maybe an Italian guy or an American guy or girl comes and does it.
It was my first stop in Pakistan, and I had no idea that this place would take me back 2,000 years in history.
It's hilarious also that the state decides that, oh, well, you know, here's a really regressive attitude that demeans our entire population, so let's reinforce it. And the fact that, you know, as he's brazenly admitting that our local elites are not interested in challenging this really reprehensive, outdated way of thinking, but rather looking to reinforce that.
Islamabad seems to have got the message that Pakistani vloggers won't accept this kind of treatment.
हमारे पास इस वक्त बहुत prominent YouTubers और digital publishers का एक group पूरा आया हुआ है.
This year's meeting between the Prime Minister and social media influencers had a different look. The vloggers were all Pakistani. Optical missteps aside, the government says its tourism push is making an impact, with the influencers and their work getting upcycled onto more traditional, established platforms. Magazines like Condé Nast and Forbes.
Just looking at how quickly the image of Pakistan has changed in, literally 18 months. That's huge. I mean, the country was almost off limits to most travelers for like a decade. And then all of a sudden, everything changed. I think it shows the power of social media and the power of social media, of travel vlogging in general.
The UN chief who recently visited, he said that Pakistan has made a remarkable journey from a country of terrorism to tourism. So people do see these things changing, but I think now is the time when you actually start spending on infrastructure, on roads, on building hotels. And I think it's also important that people have information about the ground realities, so they don't really come with expectations that will not be fulfilled.
That's so delicious.
And finally, Donald Trump recently spent 36 hours in India, just long enough to cement his bromance with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Not a lot came out of the meeting in the way of substance. However, there were some opinion pieces in the media comparing Modi's brand of Hindu nationalism with the American president's approach to Muslim immigrants. And it all took place as violence was escalating on the streets of New Delhi over that contentious new citizenship law. An American production company called G0 has picked up on the similarities between Trump and Modi. It's posted a music video populated by puppets called Aja Aja, the strongman song. We'll see you next time here at the Listening Post.
Aja, Aja, it's Modi and the Don. Aja, Aja, with the strongman song. Aja, Aja, let's make it great. Namo and Donnie love to hate. From the time our eyes first met, our great destiny was set to bring our nations closer. Man, I really admire your Muslim band. We both want to fight Beijing, but kind of envy Xi Jinping. Man, who namo tera kai. You have proxies, so do I. It's Modi and the Dawn with the strong man song. Let's make it great. Namo and Donnie love to hate.
Howdy Modi, hi to Chennai. Hello Hyderabad, yes Mumbai. I'm the most Indian guy there is. All my kids stay in the family biz. Your people love me, so I'm told. We share a beautiful love of gold. So slap my name on the Taj Mahal. It would be my second Taj Mahal. Really, I had one before. It's Modi and the Don with the strong man song. Let's make it great. Namo and Dani love to hate.